I know that. No, but yeah, sent out with video.
Need my stuff.
Double hit.
Hi. Welcome everyone, and a good and every Yom Tov. Throughout the years of the Rebbe's Nesius, the primary way of how the Rebbe would communicate and transmit his heroes and his Torah, his instructions and his teachings to us through the.
And then Motzei Shabbos there was Chazorah again. Rabbi Elfa had Chazorah upstairs, and in Bedford Avenue Sunday was a new Chazorah. Sof kol sof, after a couple of times Chazorah, you familiarize yourself with the sichos, mit gelebt mit the sichos. The Rebbe hat es gemont azach, mit gelebt mit them. A whole week, as kids even. A whole week, mit gered der Rebbe, gesagt, das zu jenem zu das. Das sie given der ganze Zugang zu dem. And in the Chof, so the Rebbe gemont starke Sachen, bechlal on a different level, on the Foratsto, Shlichus, and so forth and so on. Yugilite began to go on Shlichus then. The first guys, I remember the first ones leaving. Geshem Mendel was still in when? Chof, Geshem Mendel left, yeah? Chof, yeah. He got married. Hey, Tammuz Yudches, he began the Chuppet, let's have Beisai. I snuck out of yeshiva to go to the Chuppet, don't tell me stories. Yutesi left. So in the Chofs already, it says Berel Shem Tov, the first one started to go and Shlichus, he given, wir haben sie gekocht sich an dem, der ist gefahren do, der ist gefahren dorten. Ichke Springer hat never ever unpacked his suitcase. He was waiting to be told after the chasana. He was waiting to be told where he has to go on shlichus. So we kids knew that Ichke Springer is waiting to be told that he has to go to Baltimore on shlichus. Here, you have to leave right away. That's the early chofs. Okay, we'll talk about the later chofs a little bit later. I don't want to monopolize.
Right, thank you very much, Rabbi Kaplan. Just to make a short announcement. There will be a bus at 6:45 going to the aisle, and at 8:30 there will be a video of Yud Shvat Tafshel Lamed Hey. Will be by the aisle in the fourth tent. Whoever would like to reserve a seat, please text 347-770-4274. It's again 347. And this number as well is for all those who have questions that would like to be addressed here. Should also text this number 347-770-4274.
That's how they used to reserve seats by the Fabringen, by Rebbe. They used to
Yeah,
text,
we
I think,
text,
to reserve a seat like that.
Just to tell you how it was then to Fabringen, if you came at 8 o'clock in the morning, you stood in the back already. Bachim knew everywhere. But by 7 o'clock, you had a chapa place already. 7:30, we all knew which places. Mit gechapt, der erste auf der Kestel, der zweite, der dritte, der vierte. You know, there weren't that many places. And you had to come early in the morning, every single Shabbos. Shabbos Vachim, Tillim is 8:30, but if you weren't there 7:30, you're in trouble. You may have to stand someplace in the bleachers.
Just going on to the Lamids, we have here Rabbi Zalikson. In the Lamids, just from the beginning already, if I'm not mistaken, it was Purim, or Yud Shvat actually, when the Rebbe first spoke about Tkufa of Shleimus Haaretz. All those who were there obviously remember the Rebbe screaming about the horrible deal of giving away land as being the emistika Rei Neman of the Yidden. When someone brought tzaras to Yidden, obviously it caused tremendous pain by the Rebbe until the core. So if you can please share with us some of that, some of your zechrenis from that tkufa, as well as Purim when the Rebbe started speaking about Mi Yehudi.
Okay, the Benegiyat Shleimus Haaretz, it actually started behemshech to the 6-Day War. After the 6-Day War, which is this year 50 years, the Rebbe found out that the government, Israeli government, was sending delegations to Washington. They're ready to give up the Mekemes Hakdeshim, everything for the magic word called peace. And Mamela, they were ready b'chashoy to do everything. They wrote up things, and the Rebbe L'chatchila tried privately, in a confidential way, dealing with the different connections, contacts that the Rebbe had in the government. And when the Rebbe saw that it's not working, the Rebbe went public. And the Rebbe then started to speak about it, Barabim, in Tavshin Chavtes, in Tavshin Lamed. The Rebbe is speaking about Chevrin, the Rebbe is speaking about that there's Nachala there, that Lubavitch has Nachala there, and it was confiscated. And it was Pashit with Agmas Nefesh. But generally, whenever there was a sharp Sikha, the Rebbe would Pashit in the middle, out of Pirish Rashi, or the Razeyar, or the Razey Metamol, would scream sometimes for 10-15 minutes, if not longer. And this was something, it was something very painful. It was something that most of these siches, a lot of these siches, akoponim, were not included in the siches, in the Fabrengen itself. Some are published in the Isofis of the Siches Kedesh, and some are lachatchila only anochat pratis, individual people wrote. In addition to that, on top of that, came, and speaking about it, Purim Tovshin Lamed, 47 years ago. He started from then, and the Rebbe continued non-stop, literally non-stop, every public appearance. Whenever the Rebbe spoke in public, the Rebbe spoke about the Mir Yehudi, 15 minutes, 20 minutes on Mered. It was made of the Pashit, the Agmas Nefesh, and everything. There were times that the Rebbe said, one time the Rebbe said that it should be mentioned in every Simcha. A person should get up and object to the union of Mir Yehudi, which is basically called the law of return. It's a law that in Israel, the Rebbe says, the so-called law, that they identified that who is a Jew doesn't have to say halacha on the certificate. And the Rebbe mentioned different things that were coming up over the weeks, months. There were things that the Rebbe spoke about what was going on in the government. And the Rebbe says they're not denying what I said. The Rebbe said, but they want to know who told me about it. There was one time the Rebbe said a lashon, which is not in the siches, not in the printed siches. The Rebbe said that one time they threatened the Rebbe that if he's going to speak about Mir Yehudi, so they're going to write up in the newspapers. So the Rebbe said, in spite, the Rebbe said, I spoke to her twice as long. It was back, and it was Pashit. The Rebbe was speaking, and then it was in Israeli newspapers. There were times the Rebbe edited it. Today it's in Likutei Sichos Chaf Aleph from the Eis office when the Rebbe began speaking about it, Purim Tavshin Lamed. It went on, for as mentioned to that, there were times that people, Bacharim, outside of 770, listening to what was going on in Yechidus, they would hear the Rebbe screaming at people that are connected with the government, why they're not acting, why they're not correcting it. It was something which was mamish from Milchames Hashem. This was one of the intense ones that the Rebbe always spoke about it, did not leave an occasion not to mention it. And then it went on also occasionally in the later years.
So that was the beginning of the Tafshin Lameds. In the mid-Tafshin Lameds, mid-1970s, that's when the big Sturm of Hafotza really took off. If you can please share with us regarding the tanks and in general, all the Mitzrayim really took off in those 2 years of Lamed Dalet and Tafshin Lamed Dalet and Tafshin Lamed Hey.
Winter Tafshin Lamed Dalet was right after the war from Yom Kippur in Eretz Yisrael, and the Rebbe started to speak Heiroes, Yutas Kislev, Yud Shvat, Heiroes, Nu Mivtzoyim. The Rebbe didn't refer to it as a Mivtza then. The Rebbe said we should see to it every Jewish house should have mezuzahs, every Jewish house should have Hebrew Svarim, Pashat Svarim, every Jewish house should have a Tzedakah Pushka, and actually the Rebbe was establishing Nu Mivtzoyim. And towards the end of that year, we had already 5 Mivtzoyim.
How often would a mitzvah come out?
It was random. I mean, it was actually in that winter, in a short time, I think between Yutas Kislev and Yud Shvat, it accumulated about 5 Mivtzoyim, together with the Mivtzat film from 7 years earlier, from the 6-Day War. So the Rebbe spoke about it. It was the story in Malot, that Rahman al-Itzlan, it was then that there was a tragedy then that they hijacked, they had kids and hostages from a school, and Rahman al-Itzlan, there were karbanas then, 17 students, and the Rebbe spoke about it the Shabbos after. That was the first thing the Rebbe says. Usually we speak about it later in Fabrengen. The Rebbe says, but since something very unusual happened, the Rebbe spoke in the beginning. And the Rebbe says that now he sees what it pushed him, what urged him to speak about Mivtza Mezuzah. The Rebbe was speaking about it months earlier, about Mivtza Mezuzah. The Rebbe was speaking about the Mivtzoyim, and finally, amongst them, Rav Sholem Duchman, they decided we have to rent Pashit. The Rebbe that we started to rent, they rented trucks, the Hertz trucks, put on signs, and we waited for the Rebbe at 10 o'clock in the morning. When the Rebbe came, that's when we were ready to go. It was a big chiddush. Everybody was after davening, mit alle inyanim, and it was Pashit Mizgefarn. It was, the music was blaring, and the Rebbe motioned with his hands, and if a tank wasn't ready, we turned around on Union Street, we silenced the music, we had to fix up a few things you had to fill in, and then we left. We used to come back about 9 o'clock at night, till the Shkia. We put on film with people. I think somebody even wrote into the Rebbe, if we go according to the regular Shkia, then we can't nechet mitzvah zayin rabbeinu tam Shkia. So the Rebbe said the regular Shkia. And there were Heiros. There was one Heiro that Rabbi Chodikov gave over, that we should not just have conversations with people if it's not getting anywhere, because they're just trying to occupy our time, that we shouldn't be able to get to others. This went on a day after a day. Pashit Nochanant, full days. It was like a 10-hour thing. Summer was starting. And the Rebbe was, actually, there was a Fabrengen that the Rebbe said that the Fabrengen is exclusively the Kovet, the Bacharim, and Anash that are involved in the Mivtzoyim. The Rebbe sagt, was Fadin, they earned it. It was Parsha Kerach. And then through the summer, the Rebbe started to speak about the Rosh Tevis of Tank, Rosh Tevis, the Inyan of Mivtza, the word Mivtza. Kama in Yonim, we were posted Zecha to many in Yonim that summer, when we get to this Inyan. There were 5 Mivtzoyim then. We went out on Mivtzoyim. There were people that went out. We went out sometimes to a city out of town for a week. And the Rebbe sent down then $5 bills, a $5 bill to everyone that went. It was the 5 Mivtzoyim. The Rebbe connected it with the Pertzufim and Atzilos. Alt given Inyan of Mispar 5. And it was after a while that one of the Maskirim told us that the Rebbe asked, who's taking the achrayas for the Bittul Teira for all these days? I mean, the yeshiva was like closed, literally. The light was on, but everybody was bachutz. The Rebbe says, I'm not taking the achrayas for it. It's a bislach, it's solidified, and it's settled in that the zmanim for Mivtzoyim were set up. Alabatim used to go Sundays, and then the Mivtzoyim was set up for Friday. And the Rebbe says there's enough time Friday after Seder HaYeshiva that they can use for that. Basically, the Rebbe then also, at that occasion, one of the occasions, the Rebbe said that the Mivtzoyim are tanks against assimilation. And it was also at one occasion that there was a certain drawing which the Rebbe was very interested in it, stopped and was studying it for a while. It was today you don't see it come out. It was like green on white. It was a tank in the form film, like the Nesius of film from both sides, and a tank like bias. And the Rebbe studied it for quite a while, and that was interest to the Rebbe. There was one time I can tell a personal experience. We were once coming back from Queens. We went there to a baseball game or something, and we come back. It's getting dark. We see a silver car at our side. The Rebbe is coming back from the Dale. We put on the music. The Rebbe was sitting in the front seat usually. The Rebbe looked up, didn't say anything, then continued weiter reading. We tried saying Meine Lashon. We tried to keep up. For a while, we weren't able to keep up, went very fast. But then on Eastern Parkway in Buffalo, we were able to catch up. We're behind the Rebbe till 770. It was Chamishos above. The Rebbe came out. The Rebbe came out of the car. He motioned to the tank, the union of encouraging the Simcha, the Chulu. This was based on others. Also had experiences. There's one experience that I heard from by Mechutin actually, that somebody once met the Rebbetzin in Manhattan. Asked her if she lights candles every Friday. She didn't. They didn't know it was the Rebbetzin. So the Rebbetzin asked, "Why should we light candles?" Sagen Sie, der Lubavitcher Rebbe hat das gesagt. Lubavitcher Rebbe said so. So she asked, "You do everything the Lubavitcher Rebbe tells you?" But then she saw that there was somebody recognizing her. Actually, Mechutin was the older bacher. He was recognizing. So she immediately said, "Kinderlach, I light Shabbos candles every Friday." And then she just went weiter. Person shouldn't be able to.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Zalekson. Moving on to Tafshin Lamed Zayin, Rabbi Jacobson. Thus, what do you remember from the Farbrengen of Yutes Kislev Tafshin Lamed Zayin?
Since everyone's going off script, I'll also go off script, if you don't mind. I don't want to. And also, we'd like to have truth in advertising. Since it was also advertising, I think everyone said what everyone said here is beautiful stuff, and the Hageshim, very moving. Curious, just to go back, you're up to Lamed Zayin already, but the Yuds and the Chovs, maybe we could just go over some facts that everyone would, I'm sure, appreciate. I could pose the questions or respond in the ways that I remember, and hopefully the elder, senior, and veteran panelists here can fill in gaps. And Rabbi Feller, who has a prodigious memory and has absorbed so much, can also help along here. I'm just curious to know, the Farbrengens, when did they begin 1:30, Kabbalah Kavua, Shabbos, 1:30?
It was Tafshin Yud Zayin. There was a guy here from Israel, and he moved here, and he had a boy, and the bris was Shabbos. So he told the Rebbe, if the Rebbe used to come out half an hour after the Farbrengen.
After davening.
What?
After davening.
After davening, he used to come out, and he said nobody will come to the bris. So the Rebbe said, "Okay, we'll change it to 1:30, so that everybody will come
What
to
Shabbos?
the bris."
Do you know what Shabbos? Exact Shabbos?
Yeah.
Yud Zayin.
Yeah.
And then from then on, 1:30.
Yeah.
And how long was an average Farbrengen in those years? Was there an average?
2 hours, 3 hours.
3:30, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Not later than 4.
No.
What
Later
about-
years it became.
Yeah. I'll get those. I remember. I want to know those I don't remember. What about the big Farbrengens, the weekday Farbrengens, like Taskisa, Yudei Tammuz? Some of them went pretty late, right?
Yeah, Purim went pretty late.
What was the longest Farbrengen?
Tafshin Chai.
Is that 5th?
No, after 5 o'clock.
What time?
I was a kid still before Bar Mitzvah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go home. The Rebbe Nechal's door.
Right.
At 5:45, I was standing at the car when the Rebbe moved in, sat down, and I was on the other side of the car, so the Rebbe moved toward me. 5:45.
Rabbi Harlik, how often were
From
Farbrengens
9:30. From 9:30 in the evening.
how often were Farbrengens held in halls?
How often would the whole for Yutis Kislev, Yud Shvat, and Purim and Yud Beis Tammuz till Tavshin Chov?
I think someone made it a shima. You know how many?
Yes.
Where were the halls located? In the area, or?
There was one on Eastern Parkway and Nostrand, the Gayard. There was one in Flatbush, the Biltmore. There was one on Albany and someplace.
Rutland Road.
Rutland Road.
There's a reason there were so many, because once a Farbrengen ended, nobody ever wanted to rent the hall again.
Kislev Tavshin.
Yudalit.
Yudalit, whatever.
and Albany Terrace.
Albany Terrace.
Yeah,
There was
that's what
Farbrengen, was mit Tanzstock, and there was a liquor store underneath.
All the bottles.
Imagine what happened to the bottle.
But
Wouldn't let him in again.
I'll share a story. Yutes Kislev Yudalit. There's actually a picture where you see the Rebbe dancing. It was a hall. There's a lot of mirrors there. There were no mirrors left after the Farbrengen. But 1 o'clock in the morning of the Farbrengen was going on and on. 1 o'clock, Zalman Gurari wrote to the Rebbe a note between the Sikhs that we rented it till 1 o'clock, and after that's going to be overtime. And the Rebbe didn't even look at it, he put it into his Siddur. 2 o'clock, he sent it settle again. I mean, he wasn't doing it Mitzat Chutzpah, he was doing it Poshet to the Rebbe should know, Nesius. And 2 o'clock, another settle, the Rebbe also put it in. 3 o'clock, another settle, and this time the Rebbe took it and tore it. So obviously, he didn't write any more tzedakah. I don't know what time the Farbrengen ended, but that was a thing I heard. So, what about the Maimorim the Rebbe said Shabbos morning? What was the that the Rebbe said that?
I was there by the first one, Meir Chabderuis.
What was that?
You cancel.
Tes Oda Sheni Tov Shin Chai. There were maybe 15 people. Shabbos.
Yeah.
There were maybe 15 people and 2 kids. One was Nachum Kaplan, the other one was Shalom Yisrael Chadakov.
The Rebbe said to close the
The
door.
Rebbe came in, told him to close the door. Rabbi Mentik was there and he closed the door.
No one had a clue.
That was what people came. They're looking. They came in the store. The Nacht mit dem Klapp Mentir. Somebody apparently.
What time was the Maimer?
The Maimer was 9 o'clock in the morning. Darf nicht sagen. It's supposed to be a full Zal of Bachim.
Okay.
That was what it was.
And how many were there, and how long did it till when did it?
It stopped when it was Yud Shvat was Tavshin Chov Beis. The Rebbe came in, and there was a minyan for Kriya. And the Rebbe said, Sidzayna Maima. So everybody dropped the Sefer Torah. I mean, not dropped it, they left and they went into the room. And the Rebbe said, was mit dem Sefer Torah? Was mit the Kriya? Nobody answered. Was mit the Kriya? Nobody answered. So he closed his chumash, he said he can't tell again, and said Nizanka Maima. And that was the last time.
Okay, so hope you don't mind. Just
I actually have those questions. But,
okay, just filling in the gap.
I was going to go back to the...
I have more experience in emceeing than you do. So with that said, what about the Rebbe gave out Chanukah Geld also, the early Chavs, right?
He gave out Chanukah Geld from Tavshin Yud Gimel.
Every Chanukah. When did he stop?
He stopped Chov Beis. He stopped because somebody was here from Israel, and he went for Yutzis Kislev, and he went into the Rebbe, and he told him he's here a few weeks or whatever, and he sees that Melantnish Visidavtas and Chastidis. So the Rebbe said no more Chanukah Geld. He said he just sent Chanukah Geld that year to Montreal. But like this, he used to come in the 5th of Lichtel. There used to be a beamer set up.
Simchas Torah Lamed Beis, the Rebbe listed all the things that he stopped.
Then he came in with a sack of dollars, and he sat down, he said a sicha, then everybody walked around, and they got $1. And there was one guy, he told him, Adain Chanukah Geld liegt in Eretz Yisrael, because he wanted him to go back, and he didn't go back.
Okay, so to fill in a few more gaps, you also probably all know 3 times the Rebbe went to camp and said Sichas there. Tazayin, Yuzayin, and Tov Shechov.
Yeah.
And of course, there was the unique things then was as well the nigunim that Rebbe taught from Tavshin Tez Zayin Biz Tavshin Chov Dalet. That was after Hakofis.
That was after eating when he
Right,
used to
right.
come down, and he gave out mashka. He was some Nevna Sofer in Lanoxidis.
Tez Vov through Chov Dalet. Chov Dalet, the Rebbe said, next year we don't know what's going to be, so I'll teach two nigunim. And then the next year was Chov Hey, was of course the Stalkus of the Rebbe Tzachana, and then the Rebbe began the Sichos of Rashi Sichos. I'm just filling in some gaps based on...
We're going to go back to the...
You will? Okay. The Rashi Sichos, but the Rebbe every... Chov Hey was a Fabringen every Shabbos, short Fabringens. And, but how did the Rebbe... What caused the Rebbe to continue the Rashis? It was like he was going to be mafsik, right? And it was Waldman? Was it?
Yeah. Waldman used to write in.
He used to write and ask for the Maravakek.
There's also a letter from Rabbi Weinberg where he asked Rebbe the Shus to Chazer the Rashi Sicha on the radio because he was giving a shir, the shir B'Sefer Tanya, every Motzei Shabbat. He said he wanted to spend maybe half the time to Chazer the Fabringen, and especially the Rashi, the new style of learning that the Rebbe introduced. And the Rebbe said, I believe the answer is, it's printed, but in came Chazik Svarasi Vaadus. That was already in the beginning of Tavshin Chav Hey, that he would continue it every week. So that was even before this, that kufa.
I think the Rebbe wanted to continue Fabringen every Shabbos Chavov, but he said there are too many times.
Ich habe gemeint, der Rebbe said, man versteht doch Jiddisch, das ist eine gewaltige Sache, man verbringt alle Shabbos, aber ich habe nicht gewusst, als wir haben mal sehr viel Snack ist, aber man schreibt mehr, aber man kann nicht essen in der Heim und das und jens, hat man zuziehen bis zum Sof-Jahr.
This was Tavshin Chav Hey?
Yeah.
Chav Hey.
Yeah.
Every week there was a Fabringen in Tavshin Chav Hey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he wanted to continue like this the whole time. People wrote in. And
My first memory of a Fabringen, just for the record, is the Chav Hey, actually, Shabbos Vov Tishrei. Maybe earlier, but that one I remember very well, the Fabringen, where Rabbi Unik ran over to the Rebbe in the middle of Fabringen.
Dr. Zelikson came over to us.
Zelikson came.
So we were the kids, used to be, the shul was then the small shul that was built as Rabbi Kaplan described. So the kids were in the back of the shul, they were the bookcases, we would sit in those bookcases there.
Rabbi Jacobson, can you describe where the shalash was?
Shalash is basically the shul, the big shul, the first third, the first section.
Not even the third, less than a third.
Less than a third. What a shalash means. Well, when 770 was bought, there's even pictures of the Rebbe. You see the picture. 770 was only the original 770 that we see. The Rebbe's room was actually the last part of the building. The back of the Rebbe's room was a porch.
Yeah.
Rabbi Kaplan mentioned. You see there's actually, first like Beima Parade, the Rebbe stands on the porch speaking, and you see the kids down below. Down below, that's where the shalash. It was an open, like
Big
basically.
driveway.
It was a
It was a
garage.
driveway through a garage, a three-car garage.
A five-car garage.
Three cars.
All right, but there was room for another two.
It depends who fit into the cars. That's what
We got the pictures.
yeah. Upon that was the shalash. So in the summer, it was less problem because it wasn't very cold. So it could be Fabringens there when the Fabringens began. I mean, when did the first Fabringen begin? It wasn't the shalash. That's a good question. What was the first Fabringen and shalash? Not upstairs in the shul.
I think in the Yuds, yes.
Obviously.
In the Yuds.
Yeah.
In the early years.
Can we get
I
a
think
little more?
Tezvov. I
Tezvov,
think
yeah.
Tezvov.
When the Elam became too large, all Esther was on expansion. So the Fabringens were in the shul upstairs. In the Zal, what was called the Zal, with the Rebbe David Mincha, that was everything was upstairs. And Friedrich Rebbe, I think, also has had two, you mentioned two Fabringens, I think, were in that room. Then, when they expanded, so in the summer it was not a big issue because the shalash, as I said, the worst thing could be rain. So they put up these tarps, whatever they put up originally. Then, in the winter, they started renting the halls. That's why the halls were only winter Fabringens, not summer ones. The shalash, as you said, they already mentioned that when the shalash was Tavshin Chof Aleph was the last Chofez. The last Fabringen. Chof Al Kapon, then the shul was built, and that shul stood till Chof Ches, which means not a third, the first section, till the first beams. When you walk into 770, down the ramp now, that area, till the first beam was the shul. That I remember, it was till Chof Ches. And Chof Ches, they began to expand. 770 was expanded twice. Expand once, went approximately around another half a way, a little more. And then that was in the Chof Ches, when they broke the wall, that Tishrei, you could actually see people stood on the wall. There was so much dust. It was such a churban.
Broke the wall. Erev Simchas Torah.
Yeah.
Contracts in
You
Lamed
understand
Dalet
both
also.
like that.
In Lamed, end of Elul Lamed Gimel, they also did
went
something
to Kingston.
similar. That was when the last.
Yeah, so the Elul Lamed Gimel was the last, and that's when the white wall that we see today was put up, with all the controversy around that.
Agav, Absima mentioned about the dust, the bricks, everything. The Bacharim was standing then that in Rosh Hashanah in front of the Rebbe. There was like the wall, a halbe Wand. The Rebbe pointed out that they shouldn't fall Kedem there because all the stones, everything that's laying there.
Right.
Now, I just want to point out for a moment that the largest Fabrengen that there ever was, when it literally was wall to wall, was Yud Shvat Tov Shin Mem.
Right,
When it was Shloshim Shana, that was the largest attendance ever. That literally went till the white wall. There was seats, there was benches, till the bleachers went up to
Even
the
later, Fabrengens and Memches.
There was never anything as big as
Really?
Yud Shvat Tov Shin Mem.
Okay.
Maybe Simchas Torah, the crowd might have been different, but in terms of a Fabrengen itself, per se, that was the largest Fabrengen ever.
Okay, so to fill in a few more gaps, then I'll go to Lamed Zayin. So 770 expanded. Of course, the Fabrengens expanded. I will tell you, I remember Fabrengen, it was the Shabbos after Chofov. The Shabbos Pasha Ekev Tovshin Lamed Zayin. It's a famous Fabrengen. So asked him,
So we can find
in country. It's Yache Kala also. So the Rebbe said, fortgesund, the Rebbe said bei der Verbringen. Als Goche Prod ist, bin ich gefragt zu seiner Verbringen, gefragt zu mir so von. Hab gleich reingehabt, Edem ist so trachten, was, wer? Fortgesund der Rede. So he went, and Rabbiel went, and the Verbringen then was like the original Verbringens. There was maybe a few hundred people, not even. All the way, so I mean, it was a big simcha by us, because we were able to recreate a Verbringen from the Yuds, or the Chofs, whatever. So the Rebbe sat much closer.
It was also dripping from the top. Up in the
That I
Rebbe
don't remember.
upgerupt all the way to the bleachers. And the Rebbe figured that there's no...
But someone has a record of all the drippings in 770.
No, this was
Rabbi
this was
Jacobson,
an exception.
let's actually move on to the Mitzvah Shabbos Fabrengens and Tafshir Lamed Ches. So we know after the Rebbe's heart attack and Simchas Torah, and Shmini Atzeres, Tafshir Lamed Ches, there were no Fabrengens for an entire Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes, and no Shabbos Dike Fabrengens.
There were a few.
Although there
a
was
few
Yom
exceptions.
Tov Fabrengen, there was exceptions. Yom
Erev
Tov there
Shavuos.
was, and a few
Erev
exceptions.
Shavuos.
Well, okay, so I was getting there, right there. I want to add one more thing before we get to that. Before you mentioned the Mitzvayim, it's a very, I think, critical point to mention. Many of the major pulas of the Rebbe began in connection to events that happened at Yisrael. Mitzvah Tefillin was mentioned in connection to Chov Zayin, Shavuos, and then the subsequent months, the Rebbe Sichos, that summer the Rebbe Fabrengen almost every Shabbos as well. It was all about the 6-day war and the Nisim. And the Rebbe then said that Tishrei Chov Ches V'Hoyi Yitaka B'Shefer Gadol 3 times. It was a very unbelievable tkufa. And then Mitzvah Simchas Torah, and then Yitazkiso, the Rebbe spoke about as it felt over the Lashtachvis al Har Kochi. So that was one. Of course, after Lamed Dalet, the Yom Kippur Mulchama was the 5 Mivtzayim that Rabbi Zalekson mentioned, which then turned into the 3 Mivtzayim in the summer of Lamed Dalet for the Noshim, Neshek and Tars Mishpacha, Kashrus, and then Mitzvah Shabbos Bereishis, Lamed Hey, the Rebbe had a special Fabrengen for women. That was once in history, and that's when the Rebbe launched Neshek and reinforced it. That was Mitzvah Shabbos Lamed Hey Bereishis. So to move on, Lamed Ches, of course, was the heart attack, Simchas Torah, Leil Shmini Atzeres actually, and what happened? There was obviously no Fabrengen before Akofis, even though that was a shock to everyone, because it was the first time the Rebbe schedule was so much shifted. It was like fathomable to imagine the Rebbe changing anything. And but then the Rebbe spoke, of course, that very moving Sikha right after Yom Tov. And the Rebbe spoke from the microphone in his room. It's recorded. The Rebbe said, Hatmimim, and after that, the Rebbe began Mitzvah Shabbos Bereishis, Mitzvah Shabbos Neyach, Lech Lecha. Not only that, he insisted on being Magir the Sichas, so they all came out Mugeh. And he said within the Sicha was weaved a Maimer as well, so it was a Maimer and a Sicha. And this was all, obviously the doctors were not so happy, because every time they gave the Rebbe a few minutes, he added double or triple. And those sikhs began literally to double and triple. Chai Matzoi Chai Yesod was an hour and a half, I think. And then even more by Tzoi Shabbos, Vayetze, long sikhs. And that became the kfiyas after that. And it was all from the Rebbe's room. Till Yutes Kislev, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, of course, the Rebbe went home, Lamed Ches. And Yutes Kislev was the first Farbrengen. The Rebbe came back down to 770. It was a very moving Farbrengen. It was shorter than the average Farbrengen, but the Rebbe came in. It was hard to describe the feeling. The Rebbe walked into that Farbrengen, Yutes Kislev, Lamed Ches. And then the Rebbe continued the Farbrengens. But Motzei Shabbos became the new Seder. Instead of 1:30 Shabbos afternoon, it was after Shabbos, what time, 9:30? I think 9:30.
Well, I think it depended. It might have been a little...
Oh, because of the winter and summer. Al Kaponim, the Sikhs was Motzei Shabbos. But it was very clear that wherever the Rebbe had an opportunity to smuggle in a Shabbos Farbrengen, he did it. Achros HaPesach, then Erev Shavuos Lamed Ches was Erev Shabbos. That was the first Farbrengen Shabbos. Of course, the Shavuos. And then some others. Then this continued Lamed Tes.
Tishrei, Lamed Tes.
Tishrei Tes. But the Rebbe started finding opportunities where there were Farbrengens here and there, sporadic. The last Motzei Shabbos Farbrengen is Ve'era Tovshin Mem. So I think Eira L'chav Dal Tevis. That was the last Farbrengen Tovshin Mem. And after that, all Farbrengens were Shabbos back then. There was never more Motzei Shabbos Farbrengens. I will share this, which I think is very important. Many people are not aware of this. This was really the Tkufa. I started formally writing Hanochas that Chanukah Tovshin Mem. So I remember when I was a Bocher in Tovshin Lamed Zayin, one night of Yechidus, someone came out of the Yechidus and said to the Bocher, he said, "You don't believe what the Rebbe just said." And I was one of the people in the 770 that. And he says that he told the Rebbe that it had developed in the Spol from how much the Rebbe has accomplished and the expansion of the Rebbe's Peulas, Lamed Zayin. So the Rebbe said, "Noch gar nicht gesehen, mit sein gar anders noch Shas HaShleishim, Tovshin Mem. Be gar another scale, Tovshin Mem." And obviously today we see it was fulfilled. It wasn't just words. So I remember we always anticipated what's going to be. Then came Lamed Ches, which was Kavyochel, so to speak, a setback. And only to be proven not a setback, but after Tovshin Lamed Ches, after the Rebbe started Farbrengen and Tovshin Mem, Farbrengen's literally, that's why I asked before, what time? Farbrengen was till 4 o'clock. 4:30 was a late Farbrengen. After Tovshin Mem, Farbrengen, 4:30, I don't think there was a Farbrengen anymore. 5:30 was regular, 6. Then there was the Devarim, Shabbos Chazein, Tovshin Mem was till 8 o'clock. Bolok Mem Gimel was also till 7:30, and of course Pinchas Mem Hey was till 8.
So when did the Motzei Shabbos Farbrengen end?
We said Ve'era Mem.
I'd like to add one little thing about that is not known. The Rebbe's doctor, Dr. Bernard Laun, is my second cousin. I was the one who brought him the Chatchilu to the Rebbe. And over the course of the Lamed Ches, the whole winter Lamed Ches, he would come once a month. My father would pick him up, I would drive him to the airport, and I would debrief him, get information from him. Nobody knew anything. But I pressed a few buttons, and he told me some things. He didn't tell me a lot, until somehow it came back to the Rebbitzin that Dr. Laun is telling Kaplan things that he shouldn't be knowing. And so he told me, this is sometime around Purim time, I can't tell you anything else. The Rebbitzin asked me not to speak. But he did tell me something, Elul Tovshin Lamed Ches. He told me that he told the Rebbe that he's got to stop Farbrengen on Shabbos. This thing of Shabbos, of sitting until all kinds of hours, especially Shabbos Mevorchim. He doesn't make Kiddush and doesn't eat all day. He didn't make Kiddush by the Farbrengen and Shabbos Mevorchim. And it's too much for him, and he shouldn't do it. So like a few other things, which I'm not going to mention now, the Rebbe said, this is not negotiable. I'm quoting verbatim. This is not negotiable. So Dr. Laun says to him, why? It's your health. So he said, I'm quoting words again. Shabbos, the world is elevated. When I go down to the Elam, I elevate them, they elevate me, and Shabbos elevates everybody. It's not negotiable.
Rabbi Feller.
Let me add something just good. It happens to be we're now Yud Shvat, 40 years from Yud Shvat Tavshin Lamed Zayin, and everybody here certainly learned the Basi Legani. And you know, and that year there was a Maimer Shabbos, a Motzah Shabbos, and the Rebbe had them. It's a very unique way that the Rebbe was Madia the Maimer. But I want to point out that the Rebbe told them to use as the Yesod, the one that was at the foundation of the Maimer, that's the top of the page, the Maimer that was said on Motzah Shabbos, and he said because it was Bepirsum Yoiser. What does Bepirsum Yoiser mean? There wasn't necessarily that many more people by that Fabrengen, the Shabbos Dike Fabrengen, but Rapashas, it means it was heard around the world simultaneously on the hookup. So that was the Rebbe called that Pirsum Yoiser a special thing, and he used that. Nevertheless, after Shmois and Voira Tavshin Mem, he went back to Fabrengen on Shabbos. And it happens to be that my uncle Zozanges and Rabbi Shmuel actually wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and he said, Taka started at Nesius, but the Fabrengen is now able to be heard by thousands of people. Maybe the Rebbe should continue. And nevertheless, the Rebbe said, Kavonosei Retzuya, you have good intention, your question, but nevertheless, I have to go back to Fabrengen on Shabbos. And many things, Rabbi Jacobson mentioned that in Tavshin Lamed Beis, the Rebbe reckoned out things that he stopped or he changed. Usually when the Rebbe changed or stopped something, he didn't go back. I'll give you just another example. In Tavshin Lamed Ches, the Rebbe started to sit by Kriyas HaTorah on Shabbos, so he sat always. Although one thing he did go back, and he used to sit by Kabbalah Shabbos. But after a certain time, the Rebbe started again to stand on Kabbalah Shabbos. So there was a couple things that the Rebbe changed back to the original. Just till Rabbi Pearson comes with his other question, I figured it will like everyone's going off the thing here. So I just want to talk about a slight detail, but to give it a little bit of perspective. You know, in the Dayenu we say, Ilu Kerbonu Lifnei HaSinai. That's already Dayenu. If we just come a moment, a little bit of the feeling, the later years in the Mems, and the later Mems, and when we made that little joke about the texting before, how they used to reserve places. It happens to be that I used to hold a place for my father, was angesund by the Fabrengen in the Shvil. I used to sit many times next to Rebbe Jacobson for whatever reason. He didn't get similar to hold it. His father used to actually bring along work and work at holding the place. The people were all very happy when I got out and my father got in. They all had a little bit more room. But anyway, that being said, there was a certain the hoibina feeling. But as it came closer to the Fabrengen started 9:30 in those years. As it came closer to 9 o'clock, it was already a certain attention, a certain seriousness. There's soon going to be a Fabrengen people. The mikveh was always open till 9:30. The mikveh down the street, like Rabbi, and people did make achonis, and people learned, and there was filling up. It was pushing. It was packed. And when the Rebbe came in, it was already full, and it was a whole different aura. Just the entrance of the Rebbe to the Fabrengen, the anticipation, and then the Rebbe coming in. But another thing so there was a certain pressure, tense, till the Fabrengen started. But I want to speak a little bit about after the Fabrengen, when the Rebbe went out, and part of the crowd went out, but then you used to see groups getting together, and where the Fabrengen was, there was less people. People were talking over things that they never discussed, friends who didn't see friends, groups of Bochrim of different ages coming together. And it was, even though it was a weekday Fabrengen and everything was recorded, but people were already talking about what the Rebbe spoke in little groups of Chazorah, and not just Chazorah, but where it comes in perspective to things that the Rebbe said. And then there was the Torah, there was the Nigle, and there was the Chassidus, etc. With that, what was the question?
Was the Fabrengen Mitzvah Shabbos different? Were they structured the same as the Shabbos Fabrengen?
I'll address it a little bit, although all the scholars here can probably address it better. But let me just start with saying that it actually was. And the reason why I want to discuss it, because I really want to discuss the structure of a Fabrengen in general.
Yeah, that was.
If you'll allow me to also start with a story that in around Tavshin Chaf or so, they came to the Rebbe, the Hatzor from the Chassidim in Eretz Yisrael, that for Yutas Kislev they were able to have a half hour of airtime on the radio in Eretz Yisrael, that the Rebbe should talk those years. Thousands of people used to come to Kfar Chabad. It was a big thing, and they could get airtime for the Rebbe to talk on the radio, and the Rebbe said that he was going to go to the oil, and he gave them an answer, and he came back and said, I'm not going to do it, he can't record it. And he said, because when I speak about the day, it's on the day, and it's at that time. And I wanted to just address the fact that everyone here learns the Fabrengens from the different years, and you'll see that the first Sikha and then even the second Sikha of most Fabrengens share great similarities, because the Rebbe speaks about the potency and the power and the significance of the day that the Fabrengen is taking place. So always the first Sikha usually spoke about the occasion and how it was. Then the Rebbe went on, either there was two Sikhas, and then there was a certain Kufa, there was a third Sikha sometimes, but then there was always the Maimer. Then afterwards the order went with the Rashi Sikha and some of the questions of the Rashi.
After Chofei. Right.
Well, I'm talking in the later years. And then the Rashi, everybody knows the Seder because everybody learns the Fabrengens. And in the order that you see it is the order that it went. Now, the answer to your question, the Motzei Shabbos Fabrengen, that's you could see there's video and there's recording of it, and that basically was in the order of a Shabbos Dike Fabrengen.
Yeah. So what the order was, just to detail some more detail, was there was the first Sikha usually was about, let's say, it's a Shabbos Pasha B'Shalach, Shabbos Shira. Let's say, and then the second Sikh would be the specific Kfiyas. This year, Shira is Tu B'Shvat. Sometimes it would be a little different, but that was usually the Eight Seder. Not so often, but once in a while, sometimes the second Sikh would be completely unique. The Rebbe would talk about a subject or something he was asked. Sometimes about Mashiach and the Mems, interesting Sikhs. And then there was a Maimer. You may know the Maimer is the two types of Maimer, where they have the formal Maimer, where they sing a nigun, and everybody stood up, and the Rebbe take a handkerchief. And then the Rebbe, I think Yud Gimel was the first time that he said, Maimer Ken Sikh, Rein Schmuggeln. So you shouldn't have to have Nish Matriach Zayin Eich, Nish Matriach Zayin Mir. The Rebbe, the concept of a Maimer Ken Sikh. The truth is the Rebbe Rashab also has a Maimer Ken Sikh. But the Rebbe used that in later years. Maimer Ken Sikh became more common, where there was no nigun and there was
a handkerchief.
A handkerchief always, yeah. There's no
but
nigun.
It was structured as a Maimer.
Yeah, you can see.
You had a Dibra Maskil.
Yeah. Dibra Maskil, you can see it was a Maimer.
Everything.
Yeah, it was everything like a Maimer. It just didn't have the nigun. There's details. I mean, to understand the Ruchnisdike difference, we'll leave that for another time. But I will say this, that so the Rebbe, then there came the Maimer. After the Maimer was the Rashi, the Horace and Zayar. But the Horace and Zayar went through a few tkufas. In Tovshin Chav Tes, the Rebbe started speaking Biyurim in Kutlev Yitzchok and Ageres HaTshuva. Then he started Biyurim in Ageres HaTshuva itself. Then he went to the Kutlev Yitzchok and Zoyar. And that's how that remained until, of course, Memches, which we'll talk about. And so then the Rebbe would ask, after the Maim would be Kiragel Rashi, he would ask questions on the Zoyar. In the weeks of Pirkei Avos, the Rebbe would ask questions on Pirkei Avos, and then began Sikhs, each one answering in that order, in a very orderly, structured way, almost without exception.
And later on about the Rambam.
After Mem Dal, after Mem Hey, Mem Dal, Mem Hey. Yeah.
The Rebbe would say a Sikh on a Rambam from Achron Shal Pesach.
Not Achron Shal Pesach, no. I don't remember
Later.
the first one. A few months into the...
Yeah, right in the beginning. He spoke the Halacha Yemes.
Yeah.
Halacha from the Gimel Pro.
Right. Now, in the Gimel, another thing that's interesting in the Lamed Daled, Lamed Hey, Lamed Gimel already, the Rebbe started Bein HaMtzorim. And the years Lamed Vov, Lamed Zayin, those years the Rebbe also has explained the Inyan in Hilchos Beis Abchira, sometimes from Cheskel, and Sech Midas. The Rebbe's Kochen Zechalad, then so there's a whole bunch of sikhs on that. That kufa. The mems as they rolled on, this was the structure. The Fabrengens, as I said before, were long. Mem Aleph, of course, was a whole new Shnas Hakel that Rebbe introduced then, Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, to dance in the streets. The Rebbe spoke then about Hakel very strongly. And that year also, Mem Aleph was after Vayeshev, I think there was a Fabrengen every Shabbos as well. Mem Aleph is, if you look in the Sichas Kedesh, is the Mem Ches. Let's just go to the Memches, because I think that Kufa of the Rebbitzins is Talkus, of course.
We'll get to that in a moment. Okay. So, Rabbi Felder, what was the routine or the atmosphere after Chal B'Shvat, when it became the norm that the Rebbe would bring every Shabbos? What was the atmosphere after davening? People go home to make Kiddush. What was the whole...
Rabbi Kaplan mentioned earlier, in cutting it a place, but in the early noons already, people would come already Friday night. There were several. I have reason to know I used to be there, and they were people who literally sat
You're there
from
since Friday night.
They would sit from 1, 2 o'clock in the morning Friday night in a place to make sure they had a place. Not a lot, but there were several. But already at 6 o'clock it started to fill up, and 7 o'clock, and people davened in that place. They wouldn't move from that place. In other words, they davened there. If they got wine or something to make kiddush, and if not, they didn't. It didn't matter. Then when they would have to go to the
6, 7 in the
restroom,
morning.
forgive me. So they would have somebody. You sit here for 3 minutes. Give me 3 minutes. I come back. So you stay here, and then when I come
6,
back,
7 in the morning, it was
They
filling
were
up.
Full. And there were even the Mekaymis Kavuyim. People had to hold them, Ki'ilu, because there was also a place, there were a few benches designated, quote unquote, for Orchim. And there were sometimes the Bada Masada did hold a few benches, like taped down, because a group came, let's say, from Toronto or Montreal or whatever it was. So there was a shtickle seder, but nevertheless, as soon as the Rebbe went out, you have to also realize that they had to take away the bima of Kriyas HaTorah, and they had to also the benches that to the Rebbe's right had to be turned around, because for the davening, for whatever reason, it wasn't allowed to be facing the wrong way at the davening. It used to face forward, those benches. So there was a designated bachram that would pick it up. One of the Rebbe Shmulevich, he was a shliach in Eretz Yisrael. He was ill and he passed on, but he was one of the ones who used to move the benches. And it was a big guy, and with other guys, and it was interesting to see how they did it with their full shul, and people would be sitting in those benches, davening, facing the other way, and they wouldn't move out of the place, even for the purpose. Rebbe Camp facing one way, but even when they had to move the bench to change around, nobody went away. Everything stood up. So the bench had to be lifted up,
to reserve the
and
places.
had to walk out, and it had to be put back in the other way. That's right. See, so to make a change on the fly here.
Oops.
Something
Eerst als je
similar.
kijkt, Rabbi Zaldiksen.
If you're demonstrating how the bench is.
Yeah, something like that. You fit, but that's what they did. And then the bench would come back in, and they would say, "Watch your head," and everyone had to lower it down.
It's like the shift from the Fabrengen before Hakofis.
Oh.
Hakofis.
And actually in Tavshinun Beis, the Rebbe in Tavshinun Beis, actually the Rebbe came in about 15 minutes early, and the shul was really not yet set up. It was still in the middle of the setup.
He took a look.
It was. But all the years before that, there was a miraculous turnaround.
So how did you?
Simchas Torah, they used to actually sit on the ches. So one year, I remember the Rebbe came in. The Rebbe looked to his right, and the people that the Rebbe went, like the Rebbe's motion that they could sit down. And then I think Rebbe Goren, somebody went over and told the Rebbe that they're really all sitting, but they're on a raised platform. So the Rebbe wanted people to sit.
So after the Fabrengen, people would go home to make kiddush. How was that?
A few select people. Some people went home or went somewhere close by to make kiddush for whatever reason, but before the Fabrengen. But a lot of the Olam
So
made
Suda
kiddush
Shabbos by day
7:70.
didn't exist.
After first of all, in the winter was Motzei Shabbos, and in the summer it was like a late, after the Fabrengen. Most
many
Siddur Shabbos
chants
is
were
gewaschen
not
for
eaten. Many
Fabrengen.
chants were not eaten.
Many chants were eaten.
Chant was eaten on Motzei Shabbos. As a matter of fact, I believe when the Shluchim went to Eretz Yisrael,
No, I don't think we need to get into details.
when Rabbi Jacobson held a big Siddur Shabbos in his home where the Chayzrim used to chazer the Fabrengen, after in the summer months especially, and there was a big chazorah, and they had cholent. He maybe didn't need it, but there was. But anyway, actually, when the Shluchim went to Eretz Yisrael, I think there was a vort to be said that these Bachrim don't eat cholent Shabbos. They didn't eat cholent for a certain amount of time. It was a deep word for the Yerushalmi people to try to bagreif with what they're dealing with. That's a whole.
Minhag start to give the Rebbe a bottle of mashka Erev Shabbos, or to bring him to Maskiris Erev Shabbos, in order to be machris by the Shabbos Fabrengen about your pu'ula or your chasana, etc.
In the beginning, it was that people went over in the middle of the Fabrengen and give in a bottle for this, for that, for that.
This
for
started
that.
already from the beginning of the Nesius?
No, later. I think at the end of the Yud. And then it took up too much time. So they decided instead of that, everybody should give in a bottle before. They wrote in a zettel for what it is. And then the Rebbe, when they came Shabbos, they just went over and took the bottle and laid
This
it
was
in.
for personal simchas, Rebbe Heilig is talking about.
Even for
For Meistas.
for Meisdes.
Started in the Lamed, he started.
Yeah.
The Chovsa was still Gestalt Mash.
Yeah. And then he started that everybody should announce for what the bottle is.
Rebbe Fell, you have anything to add?
You're talking about the mashke.
Yeah.
So the every
Just to
chosn-
repeat it in your days, how to...
No, but in my days it was already finished. That's why I wanted it to be very important. The Rebbe Halleck said there was the personal birthdays. Then it went down. The Rebbe, I think, spoke one Shabbos. I don't remember what
Wait a
Shabbos.
second.
it
In the
was.
early years, you had a birthday.
There
You
was
approached
one-
the Rebbe by the Fabrengen with a bottle of
It was in the
mashke.
early Lamed.
He once said, "Me patet mir die Zeit."
But at one point, the Rebbe stopped.
There's a
The
whole bunch
chosen, it only was left to a chosen, got a bottle still, and bar mitzvahs I think stopped.
You're talking about a lot later. I remember there was a tkufa, I don't remember the years, maybe Rebbe Kaplan, where any birthday, Yom Haledes, whether bar far bar mitzvah, no bar mitzvah, went over to the Rebbe with a cup, not with a bottle.
We as kids, we used to go over to the Rebbe before Bar Mitzvah, because after Bar Mitzvah, you went into Yechid. When you had a Yom Haledes, you used to go and buy a niggin between siches, and that was standard.
But the bottles per se, a bar mitzvah bocher went and a chosen,
It
and
meant-
then
I think
it
it was-
stopped officially. The Rebbe said it's going to
No, in
stop.
Mem Dalet, the Rebbe said a very sharp Eishprach. It's Menishkim Vodka Taylor. Do you remember?
A schenker maybe.
Yeah, that he does. He's not. He says ich tail mashkin, nicht vodka. Because then every Tom, Dick, and Harry basically had something. They burped. They went up with a bottle of mashkin.
So again, Rebbe Fell, how would
Only
He-
Mesibus of Kedusha.
He said, "Patet mir die Zeit."
So again,
So then it became that for special occasions of afotas amayonas and these kind of things, that's who got the bottles. And sometimes the Rebbe actually brought the bottles. He said, "Isarusa de Leila." A lot of times you see that in the Sikhs. The Rebbe said there's going to be such and such a thing. They should come up for mashke. Sometimes the Rebbe gave for Eretz Yisrael and for different things. But then in the later years, it became the Seder, that if somebody made a dinner, or a Mlava Malka, or something for an occasion, a concert, or only moizdis, and only for something, for a Fatzis Amayonis, they would bring the bottle before Shabbos to the mosquitoes with a little letter, and then and the mosquitoes brought down the mashke already to the Fabrengen, and then the Rebbe would say, "Die alle some zugestellt the Budlach, Meile gehen Oibin," whatever the Rebbe, different things that you see the Rebbe said in the Fabrengen, and at that point people went up. You also the Bachram who were going to Russia in the Tkufa of the later Mems and till through the early Nuns, they used to go up for all the Fabrengen. And you wanted to know, because Russia was a big secret, it was everything, because it was officially dangerous and a secret and all that. So they were the only ones who didn't have to make an announcement. So how did you know if a bocher is going to Russia? If a bocher went up there and got mashke and didn't make an announcement, it means, he's going to Russia. Right? So that was the cat was out of the bag, Muzak. But nevertheless, no announcements were made. The Rebbe did not want that announcement should be made from the table about something going on in Russia in Soviet times. And otherwise...
would this work at a weekday Fabrengen as well?
There was the mashke on a weekday Fabrengen was special occasions, and I believe from Isarusa de Leila also only.
And at a certain point, if I'm not mistaken,
there
that
was
ended.
Tashbov Tavshimem Zayin. The Rebbe called up people who made a achlata to make a Fabrengen. I believe there's even a video of that. But that was Isarusa de
At a certain time and point?
Vayakel Nun Beis had many bottles there. The Kinas HaShluchim Tavshin Nun Beis, I think, was the record. If I remember correctly, it was 57 bottles, but I don't remember exactly. Yeah, something like that. I might be wrong. Something like that. And,
So just by the Fabrengen itself, Rabbi Jacobson, how did a chassid stand for 5-6 hours, have koyach to stand for so long by the Rebbe's Fabrengen?
You have to ask a chassid that question. I can tell you how I figured it out.
A person.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I guess different people had different ways. I'm sure some people it was pure Kabbalah sale, and that was that. Some people were interested in what the Rebbe had to say. Simply as that.
Some people had rubber soles.
For myself, I was able to be a chezer and a maniach, so I really didn't have a choice. It was more, for me, the challenge was not standing, the challenge was remembering. Standing was the easy part. The remembering was the big difficulty, and that was, I mean, I could just speak for myself. It was, to me, it was like, I think Rebbe Kaplan mentioned, look, Moshe Rabbeinu was coming down from Har Sinai with a Gili Chodesh, Gili Elikus, and he's saying things that are said for the first time ever, and you'll never hear them again. That, I think, is a pretty big motivator if you respect the Rebbe. And that, I think, is a pretty good reason to stand and listen. That's how I see it. It wasn't difficult.
Sometimes
frankly.
it was very pushy. It wasn't easy. Also, so the bigger Fabrengens, it was a tough thing to do. But you know what? It never entered anybody's mind. I think it was part of what it says in the Mishnah that no one said Tzarli Amokim. You know, there was I'm doing tzfufim.
The most difficult was, of course, Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah, when it was Kfiyas, that Simchas Torah was Friday.
Shabbos, yeah.
So then there was a Fabrengen Thursday night, 4 Kofas, a Fabrengen Friday evening, Fabrengen 1:30 Shabbos, and a Fabrengen before the Shkia Shabbos afternoon.
4 Fabrengens.
4 Fabrengens. And, with
Not
all
to
the
mix it up.
And, right, and L'chaims. And the dancing was not exactly conducive. It was very difficult. I remember the last hour of Simchas Torah Fabrengen before a Kofas, my time, it was almost impossible to hear the Rebbe. Rabbi Yael would always be signaling to me, Chednisht, Chednisht. And I remember I would move up very close up in the shvil, mamish inches from the Rebbe, because the noise in the shul, first of all...
That was the only time. Only Simchas Torah,
That
because
was
people were
because,
coming
first of all,
back.
guys were
People
coming
coming
back
back
from
from
shuls.
Talucha. And the benches.
But more than that, the women's shul thought it was already Hakofis. They didn't even know. Because they didn't even know what was going on. So the noise was I remember that was...
That was an exception.
Remember Shashtil, the Melech
There was
Shlof?
always, yeah.
yeah.
The Rebbe said that on Simchas Torah, actually.
Yeah, Shashtil, the Melech Shlof. And,
That's when he turned over the cup.
Yeah, when he turned over the
That was
cup.
Tov Shemem Vov, I believe.
Vov. And then the end of the Fabrengen, I'll just say to tell the story in case you're not familiar. So the Rebbe then spoke a whole thing about he turned over the cup, and he asked everybody to turn over the cup. He gave a whole beer on it with the Gvim from the Meneda, the Mashpia. And it was such a tumult, because remember, there were those that heard the Rebbe, saw the Rebbe, but there was a lot of people standing in 7-7, they couldn't see or hear the Rebbe. So they didn't even know, is it a Sicha, is it a Niggin? And here the Rebbe made the thing, and Mezinkt that Niggin, and then the Rebbe wants to speak suddenly. It's not like suddenly everyone knew, still. It wasn't that way. So everyone says, Shah, Shah, Shah. The Rebbe then smiled and said the following, and this also almost no one heard. The Rebbe said there was once a king, a melech, he went to sleep, so he had a mosharis, and he was making sure, he was outside, he made sure to be quiet, to let the king sleep, the melech zol shlof. So there was a bigger king, and he had several mosharis, so they all made shashtil, the melech shlof. So then there was the biggest king, he had so many mosharis, made shashtil, the melech shlof. They woke him up, because there were so many people saying shashtil. That was the Rebbe's reaction to Simchas Torah. So the last hour, to be honest, was extremely difficult to hear. And I remember for me it was like, if we don't hear it, we're not going to be able to write it. And that to me was like impossible. I felt the achrayus, because if we don't write it down, it's lost forever. And that's a big motivator. I'm talking now from Pechina of Chazara and so on.
Rabbi,
I'd just go over, I think it's important, if you don't mind. I was going to go over, since time is limited, and you can fill in some details. So things changed in Memches. And this, of course, is both sad and there's a combination of many feelings when you talk about this Kufa. So, but before that said, what was the last big Fabrengen?
The last weekday Fabrengen was Tu B'Shvat Tov Shemem Ches.
Yeah.
Chamisha B'Shvat Tov Shemem Ches.
And that's before Chav Beishvat.
A week before.
So you just kissed Memches. But before that, already in Memvov Mem Zayin there was Shinuyim. If Yutas Kislev was sometimes on Sunday, the Fabrengen was only Shabbos.
Tov Shemem Zayin, the Rebbe wrote an answer. His father Shalil Leiti every Yutas Kislev. Whatever. There was a Fabrengen in the end, but it was not on cable. It was not on a regular
but there
cable
were some
Fabrengen.
others that the Rebbe did not do in the weekday, did it on Shabbos instead, right?
Yeah,
There were
when
a
it was close to Shabbos.
Yeah.
That
So
was
then
it.
Memches came Chav Beishvat, of course. And the truth is, the Shinuyim did not happen right away. That Shabbos, there was a Havamina, the Rebbe would not Fabrengen Mishpatim, because it was the middle of Shiva. The Rebbe was home, obviously sitting Shiva. But then last minute, Friday afternoon, the Rebbe was coming to 7:7, and we knew there'd be a Fabrengen. And it was a very regular Fabrengen. I mean, he spoke about the Rebbetzin, about Gilgulim and all that, but it was a Fabrengen with the same structure. Rashi, Zehar, everything was the same structure. Then came Pesach. After Pesach, I remember vividly, Sazirim would say it was the Shabbos after Pesach. And suddenly the Rebbe, and this was so clear because all the years, as I said before, the structure was very clear. Rashi, Zeyar, Pirkei Avos, Rambam, there was no mixing. And suddenly, Mesazim would say that, I remember listening, and the Rebbe suddenly connects the Rashi to the Zeyar. And like I starts answering the question, answering both of them together. It was like different. They didn't know where it was going. Then the weeks after that, slowly it started changing completely, where the Rebbe then stopped even saying Rashis, then stopped Zeyars and Pirkei Avos.
Let me just add.
Chukas Memches. Let me just please fill in because I
just want to say on a technical thing. After that Parshas Mishpatim, for the next 3 Shabbos, there was no Farbrengen.
Right.
That was Shabbos Avorchim, that Mishpatim. Then afterwards, the Rebbe did Farbreng, and he said he's going to Farbreng.
Bis Mashiach et kommen.
Thank you, Rabbi Harlik.
Yeah. But the Shinuyim happened, so Zim is saying. Now, we saw the Shinuyim, it was very, very clear. Then, of course, which Shabbos was the Farbrengen, the first one, the short Farbrengen? Is it that? 3:15, sometimes 6 o'clock. 3:15, the Rebbe Tolashevsky, Chazan Tolashevsky stands up and starts singing Yehirot, and the Rebbe makes them to sing Yehirot. 3:15. And I remember everyone blamed him. He stood up, so the Rebbe felt he has to sing. Kemuvin and Pasha, there's nothing to do with it. The Rebbe doesn't want him to sing, he's not going to sing. But he sang to this, and that from then on, Farbrengen started ending 3 o'clock.
I just want to move on to more. I
3:30
just want to move on to more general questions.
No, one second, let me just finish one more thing. Then came the summer. Chukas, Memches, was the last mimer that the Rebbe said in Be'efin Kavua that we were able to identify. Even my morim began to disappear, so to speak. So I'll just share this. At the end of the year, when we presented to the Rebbe, Sefer Maimorim Toshim Memches, so the last mimer is Chukas. So we wrote to the Rebbe that we're not sure whether Chukas is the last mimer, and since we're printing the Sefer, we want to confirm. So the Rebbe didn't answer yes or no. He just crossed out the question mark, left it, and he added a date to the Sefer Maimorim. So basically, Chukas Memches. Of course, there were Maimorim Memtes, Erev Pesach, Erev Shavuos, from the with a Nigan, and then there was a few other Maimorim, Chaysor and Neach, in the later years. But Maimorim really ended Be'efin Kavua Memches. I just wanted to give that final picture.
Okay, Rabbi Harlik, how do we know when the Rebbe would Farbrengen in the early years? What was like the simon in the for Shabbos Farbrengens? What was like the simon before?
The early years, there was standards when the Rebbe Farbreng. Every Shabbos Mevachem, Ayem de Pagra, Chafov.
There was no surprises.
No surprises the first years. Yutis Kislev it was, Yutrat, Purim.
Now, how would we know when the Rebbe would Farbrengen? If there was no surprise in general, what about later on in the Lamas?
Later on, the way we
There were any Ramazim?
was Rashi. Yeah, the Rashi Sichas.
Yeah,
After
later
Chafei,
on.
when the Gabbai would announce, and he would look at the Rebbe, if the Rebbe walked out before he announced Mincha, it meant there's going to be a Farbrengen.
Yeah.
If the Rebbe waited, when he announced Mincha, there would be means there's no Farbrengen.
Now, in Gore later years, the Rebbe would say in the morning on the way into Shacharis, and then people would run around to all the shuls. This was involved in Zayin, that kufa, because it wasn't always a Farbrengen. The Rebbe actually was Mediyah Shabbos morning. There's going to be a Farbrengen.
Then there was also another kufa where he was Mediyah to Waldman. There's a Rashi. So that was basically an indicator. There was, of course, that Shabbos, a very sad Shabbos, where they announced a Rashi, and the Rebbe became very
But
upset.
he spoke about it.
Yes, Chavches.
I think it was Chavches.
I think it was Chavches, no?
Chavtes meant Chavtes.
Okay, we can look it up. Listen, you can look it up. And
But that shows also the lie with the Rebbe. You say it's Nesinosim Sinai, so a head yet can't just say Sinai is giving to the Rebbe.
I remember I was a kid. I remember the Rebbe running out from the stender. It was how upset the Rebbe was. Ich will nicht gehen von da, mit sich dann
Mit mir Jakob sein, die Davenen mit nicht Davenen, der Woche kommen in mir sagen.
It was a bad scene. Then the Rebbe, there was no Farbrengen the next Shabbos. Then the Shabbos afterwards, there was a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe said, then the Sicha Kol HaKayis, and then the Rebbe said, since Hashgacha Pratis,
he did explain the Rashi.
So before Shabbos, you wouldn't know if there would be a Farbrengen?
No.
When you were learning
Shabbos Varchim always, and Yom the Pagra always. But there were times absolutely not.
Through Mem Zayin.
For
Through the beginning of Mem Ches, as a matter of fact.
And
Yudalit Kislev, Tafshi, when it was 25 years, Yudalit.
Yeah.
So when the Rebbe was going out of the davening, Pinyaltois went over to him. It said the Rebbe Farbrengen today. It was his son Zupu.
Right.
So the Rebbe, he told the Rebbe, he said, Meshulik Chat Chones. It him opzahlen the Chat Chones mit dem Farbrengen. So the Rebbe came, he Farbrengen, and then later, after he Farbrengen, no, auch gezahlt the Chat Chones, when in gleich.
So, Rabbi Jacobson,
One
when
about surprises, I just want to throw out. Even the later years, the Rebbe seemed to have a particular pleasure to surprise people. Even when he had the called the Malachach, what do we call them? The bouncers that would follow the Rebbe everywhere without mentioning names. Akaponim, so there was, the surprises were like this. Purim Mem Aleph was Friday. The Rebbe said a mimer after Mincha, told them to lock
Were
the
you
doors.
there?
I was upstairs, Mamish upstairs. I was a bacher, but I didn't even know about it.
Yeah. I mean, they're just a very
Then
limited
there was
time.
Yud Gimel,
Erev
Yud Gimel
Pesach,
Nissen
yeah.
from the porch in
Normal.
this. The Birchas Hachama was that year too, but that wasn't a
Erev
surprise.
Pesach,
Right,
Tavshim
there's the bus.
Then of course,
the
Nosei Tovshin Nun Aleph.
The bus will be coming in a couple of minutes. I just wanted to ask you more closely questions. So when will the Rebbe start being Magia every single Fabringen? From what week on?
Every single began in Mem Ches. In Mem Zayin began almost every one.
And Memvov also even.
Yeah, no, Mem Vav, Mem Zayin began more kaviyasdik, but Mamish every week was Mem Ches.
With
Mem Zayin, actually, first Sefer Bereshit is Magia, both versions. Hebrew
So in
and-
Sefer Sichos, that's entire Fabringens.
Sefer Sichos Mem Zayin exists because there were so many Mugadik Sichos, Mem Ches, Mem Tes, and that was that. Then after that, every Shabbos there was Magia, every Fabring.
Just to conclude,
Except one, Vayakal Pekudei Mem Ches.
just to,
No one knows why.
just to conclude, what can you share with the Bachrim, the experience that you had standing by the Rebbe's Fabringen? How can you give that over to the Bachrim today, in a way that they can feel that as well? Rabbi Feller first.
Obviously, the Rebbe says, I was bringing yesterday with Chassid Shahid, and when it's the Rebbe is Kula Ruchnis anyway, so it's not Negeya, the Hagbolis of the Zman, or the Mokim, or the Guf, and whatever it is, and like you see, there's a letter from the Friedrich Rebbe to the Rebbe in Chelik Tezvov where he says you can also be part of it, you can experience it, like Rabbi Kaplan was saying earlier, when you close your eyes, it's really forever, it's Inyan Nitzchi, and it's like it's given today, like Rabbi Jacobson said, Nesinosim Sinai, so Ma Lahalon, Be'im of Yira B'Desa B'Ziyah means the whole time, and certainly if this is how the Rebbe is giving it now, then certainly we have it now, and Fakert, I watch the Bachrim to see how to have it now.
Rabbi
Yeah,
Jacobson?
I second what you say. At the end of the day, tonight's Yud Shvat, and if you listen to the Maimon Basel Gani, Tovshin Yud Aleph, which I wasn't here, Rabbi Feller wasn't here, but you could hear it if you really you imagine yourself standing with the Rebbe. The Maimon is Meididik, especially when the end there, when the Rebbe starts crying and talking about himself. So I think it's a matter of all about the Simas Lev, as the Rebbe says. If you really commit yourself, time and space doesn't make a difference. Thank God, and maybe that's why Bashgacha Pratis we have all the recordings. Obviously, we all want to have the Neshama Beguf Hu Yigalenu here Begashmias, but this is clearly our sign of our time. There's no question that a person can live with the Rebbe. I could say from the Fabrengens, it was Gili Alakus Mamish. Every Fabrengen, some Fabrengens you saw more than others, and all these things remain Nitzchim today. I'm echoing what Rabbi Feller said, and I think our challenge is to, even those of us that were standing there, is to Kol Yem Yeh Beinecha Chadashim, that we should experience it today exactly as it was then. At the end of the day, remember, it's not about the experience alone, it's also the Teitzahs. The Rebbe always would say, many, many times, it all comes down to whether it comes down to action. Udin and the shaman, but the Rebbe he would sometimes be very harsh even on himself, that it doesn't come into action. It means that the speaker spoke Dvarim Chmon Litzlan that are not...
Everyone wanted to have a pale mamish, have a pum
Exactly.
question mark.
So that's the evidence.
About Fabrengens, they wrote X amount of people tuned in, X amount of people viewed the Fabrengen, and they would give a duch, how many people, when especially it was on cable or whatever it was, and the Rebbe wrote several times, underlined twice, Habepum question mark, what's the pale mamish, what's the action, what happened from the deed of this Fabrengen?
Thank you very, very much. The bus will be here in 5 minutes. Everyone can enjoy refreshments in the back. And anyone has any questions can come up now to ask the panelists. Thank you very much, the panelists. And if you can please help stack up the chairs. Everyone is welcome to ask the panelists any questions that he may have. I didn't even notice the crowd.